So now we're going to talk about some basic financial terminology that you will hear throughout chapter 3. Okay. In the first bullet point here, we're going to talk about the word principal. Okay. So if you borrow a sum of money, P, from a lender, or if you deposit a sum of money, P, in a savings account, then P is referred to as the principal. Okay, so basically, a way to think about the principal, say you went out and you borrowed $5,000 for school. Okay, so you made a student loan of $5,000. Okay, so $5,000 is the amount of money that you're borrowing. That would be your principal. Okay, and then, you borrow the money for so much time, and when it comes back to pay back the time to come back, pay back the loan, you end up paying the $5,000 plus any interest that has accrued on the loan. Okay, but the amount that you borrow is the principal. Okay. Another situation in which you could think of principal is with a savings account. If you went out to the bank right now and you opened a savings account and you put in $100 into your savings account, that principal $100 that you put in, that's your principal. That's the amount of money that you deposit into your savings account. Okay, so that's how you can think of principal. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the word interest. Okay, so again, this is something you probably have an inkling for just from your own life. Okay, so in the second bullet point, when money is borrowed, whether it is a savings institution borrowing from you when you deposit money in your account, or you borrowing from a lender, a fee is charged for the money borrowed. This fee is rent paid for the use of another's money, just as rent is paid for the use of another's house. This fee is called interest. Okay, so thinking back to that fictitious example that we just said with a student loan. If you went and borrowed $5,000, the $5,000 will be your principal, okay? But at the end of the day, you pay back the $5,000 plus the interest that has accrued on the loan, okay? So when you borrow money, you always have to pay back interest, which is a certain percentage of your money, okay? On the flip side, if you think of a savings account or some kind of investment, okay, interest is the reason why we don't keep all of our money as cash stored in a shoebox under our bed. Okay, there is an advantage to sticking your money in the bank and saving it. Okay, because your money will earn interest, it'll earn a certain percentage of how much is in your account. Okay, unfortunately, when you're saving money, the interest rate is not very high. Okay, but at least you'll get a little something back for saving your money in the bank. Okay, so that's your interest. Okay, the next term that we're going to hear is the interest rate. Okay, and that's something we've kind of already talked about. And again, you should have some kind of inclination for. Third bullet point, interest is usually computed as a percentage called the interest rate of the principal over a given period of time. The interest rate, unless otherwise stated, is an annual rate. Okay, so again, we talked about this when we did the conversion between percents and decimals. So you're going to see interest rate involved in all of your problems. If you think back to the student loan example, you borrow the $5,000 and you're going to have to pay interest on that $5,000. And how much do you end up paying for interest? Well, it's based on the interest rate. You might be borrowing the money at 4.25%. Okay, so you'll have, that's the percentage of the money that you would have to pay over time. Okay, or we said if you put money in the bank and you have a savings account. Okay, savings accounts don't have very high interest rates right now. That's why you make a little bit of interest, but not very much. Okay, so 0.5% right now might be a good interest rate for a savings account. Okay, it's very small. Okay. Finally, the last term we're going to talk about is actually term. Okay, so the last bullet point here talks about term. You might hear that word. The term of a loan or investment is the amount of time the money is borrowed or invested. Okay, so when you hear this phrase term, just think of time. Okay, so there's always some kind of time involved with your your problem. Okay, so these are the 4 big words you will hear repeatedly throughout chapter 3. Okay, so try to get familiar with them. You can see from these definitions we just went through, many of the problems that we're going to work, there'll be one of two situations. Either you're going to be borrowing money, so you'll be making a loan, or you're going to be saving money through a bank account, some kind of savings account. Okay, you can kind of think of the situations interchangeably. They're all going to involve a principal, an interest rate, and a term. Okay. All right, now we're ready to jump into actual section 3.1, which is simple interest. Okay. Like I said, throughout this chapter, you're going to be talking about loans, investments, or savings accounts, and there's lots of different ways to do this. Okay. Simple interest is, no joke, the simplest way to do all of this. Okay. There are 4 sections in chapter 3, and 3.1 simple interest is the simplest of the sections. Okay. So at the bottom of page 2 of your section 3.1 notes, we are going to get introduced to the simple interest formulas. Okay, so you can see them right here at the bottom of page 2. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up so I can see all of the formulas here. Okay. Let me get settled here, right there. Okay, so you can see here, there are 3 formulas for simple interest, okay? And actually these 2 at the bottom are equivalent. These are the same at the bottom. So you could really just know one or the other, okay? So really there's only probably 2 formulas you need to know for simple interest, and you will be given a formula sheet, and these formulas will be on your formula sheet, okay? So let's go ahead and start reading about the formulas, okay? Right here at the top. It says, with a simple interest loan, okay, and again, I'm speaking, let me clear something up. When you do simple interest is more than likely going to be a loan, okay? Savings accounts, investments with simple interest are rare. So when we are speaking about simple interest, more than likely it will be a loan, okay? But if it is possible to have a simple interest investment or savings account, okay? All right, so back up here, with a simple interest loan, the interest is calculated as a fixed percentage of the principal and is paid at the end of the term, okay? Here come the 2 formulas. The first formula has to do with the interest due on a simple interest loan, okay? The interest I on a loan of P dollars at simple annual interest rate R, which has to be in decimal form, for T years is I equals P times R times T, okay? So what this is doing, if you made a simple interest loan, this first formula is calculating how much interest you would have to pay back on the loan, okay? So your interest, to translate this, your interest would be the principal times the interest rate times the time. Okay, and like we've already talked about, interest rate has to be put in as a decimal, time has to go in as years. Okay, so if you do principal, which is the amount of money you borrowed, okay, principal times interest rate as a decimal times time in years, that's going to tell you how much interest you have to pay back, okay, on your loan. All right, so then in the second formula, okay, like I said, these 2 boxes are equivalent, so you can think of this second formula as either version, okay, whichever one you like better, okay. This is going to tell you how to calculate the total amount due on a simple interest loan, okay. Suppose a simple interest loan is made. When the money is paid back, the amount of money that was borrowed as well as the interest is paid back, okay. So, that applies to a loan in general. Anytime you borrow money, you have to pay back the amount you borrowed plus any interest that has accrued, okay? So it says down here, therefore, the total amount A due at the end of a loan of P dollars at simple annual interest rate R in decimal form for T years is given by either, in this first box, A equals P plus P times R times T, which is equivalent to A equals P times all of 1 plus RT in parentheses, okay? So with this second formula, okay, it is really intuitive. You almost don't even need a formula for it, okay? So think about it this way. If you are dealing with any kind of loan, okay, A is referring to the total amount that you're going to pay back. You're going to pay back the principal, which is how much you borrowed, plus any interest, okay? That goes for any loan, not just a simple interest loan, okay? So using variables, A is the total amount I pay back. That's going to be the principal P plus the interest I, okay? If this is a simple interest loan, P is still the principal. We know to calculate the interest for a simple interest loan is P times R times T, okay? P times R times T, that is how you calculate the interest for a simple interest loan only, okay? And that, if you notice, that's this box right here. So that's where that formula is coming from. All this first box is saying, okay, is that the total amount you're going to pay back is going to be the principal plus the interest, because this is really the interest right there, okay? This formula in the first box is equivalent to this guy, okay? Because all you have to do, okay, over here, we left off with A equals P plus PRT, okay? It is the same thing as this. Why? Well, if you notice, both pieces on the right involve a P. So all that is done is you factor out a P and you write what's left, okay? If you factor out a P from the right side, that is going to give us 1 plus RT, okay? And you can check by distributing, okay? If you distributed this back out, you would get P times 1, which would give you the P plus P times RT, which is this piece, okay? So that's where this particular version of the formula is coming from, by just factoring out P from over here, okay? All right, so these are your two simple interest formulas, okay? So you're either going to use I equals PRT, or you're going to use A equals P times 1 plus RT, okay? And again, you could use this version instead of this version, just whichever one you like better, okay? In a few minutes, I'm going to talk about how you recognize a simple interest problem, okay? I'm giving you a word of warning right now, okay? When you have a test on this material, it is going to be all 4 sections of chapter 3, okay? Every problem will be a word problem, okay? And you've got to figure out what situation it is, okay? You're going to have simple interest, which are these two formulas. You're going to have something called compound interest. You're going to have continuous compound interest. You're going to have the future value of an annuity formula. You're going to have present value of an annuity. And you're going to have something called amortization, which is paying off a debt. So you're going to have all these word problems, and you have to figure out which formula to use, okay? So in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about how you would recognize the problem as a simple interest problem. If it is a simple interest problem, then boom, you use either I equals PRT, okay, or A equals P times 1 plus RT, okay? As far as choosing between the two simple interest formulas, okay, remember they do very different things, okay? This formula calculates interest. If I'm trying to figure out how much interest I pay back on my loan, I'm going to use the interest formula. If I'm trying to figure out what's the total amount I pay back, the interest plus the principal, then I'm going to use the second formula with the A value, okay? All right, so let's go to the top of page 3, okay? So again, now that we know our two formulas, we've got I equals P times R times T, and A equals P times 1 plus RT, okay? These formulas for simple interest can also be applied to a simple interest savings account or other simple interest investment, which I have already told you. We will either be working with loans or investments, savings accounts. For simple interest, it's more than likely going to be a loan, okay? But if you did have a savings account, it would work the same way. A is going to be your final balance, of your savings account. P is going to be the original deposit. I is going to be the amount of interest accrued. R is going to be the simple annual interest rate in decimal form. And T is going to be the number of years the money is invested. Okay, so you can look at your situations either as loans or savings accounts. Okay, here's two more terms that you might encounter. Present value versus future value. Okay, let's read about that. And this also extends kind of throughout chapter 3. The principal is the present value of your simple interest loan or investment, whereas the A value is the future value of the loan or investment. Okay, so like if I went out right now and I made a $5,000 student loan, okay, P is the amount of money that I borrowed right now. That would be the present value of the loan. Okay, and then in the future, that loan is going to accrue interest, and then I'm going to end up paying back the $5,000 plus any interest that accrued. So I would owe more than $5,000. Okay, so I would owe the principal plus the interest. Okay, so in the future, I would owe $A. Okay, so you can think of present value as how much money you borrowed if it were a loan, or if it were a savings account, it's the amount you put in the bank like right now. Okay, and in the future, that's going to be your A value, your future value. That's either how much money you pay back if it's a loan, or if it's a savings account, it's going to be, your principal plus the interest, that current balance of the savings account. Okay. Like I said, when you think of your formulas right here, this last bullet point, it says we can solve for any one of the variables if the others are known. Okay. So like I said, you're going to encounter a lot of word problems in this chapter. Okay. You've got to figure out which formula applies, which variables are given, and then use those variables to solve for the remaining one. Okay. All right. Last thing we're going to do before we start doing examples. Okay. I promised you in this box right here, we are going to talk about when should the simple interest formulas I equals PRT and A equals P times 1 plus RT be used. At the end of the day, all 4 sections from chapter 3 will be mixed up. You've got to be able to recognize simple interest problems. Okay, well, the easiest way is going to be the problem will actually have the phrase simple interest in it. Okay, that is a dead giveaway. Okay, if you see the phrase simple interest, boom, automatically I'm going to use either I equals PRT or A equals P times 1 plus RT. It's a simple interest problem. Okay, but that's not a guarantee. It may not have that phrase simple interest in it. Okay, so I'm going to put, let's see, the phrase simple interest is in the problem, or if that phrase is not in the problem, you will not see the phrase compounded. Well, let me do this. Let me put, you won't see the word compounded. Okay, because like I said, in addition to simple interest, we're going to talk about compound interest, we're going to talk about annuities, paying off a debt, and all the problems in chapter 3, with the exception of the simple interest formulas, are going to contain this word compounded. Okay, so as long as you do not see the word compounded, it's a simple interest problem. Okay, so that's how you can tell. Okay, so either you're going to see the phrase simple interest in the problem, or if you don't see that, it will not have the word compounded. Okay, that's how you identify a simple interest problem. Once you identify it as a simple interest problem, then you've got to decide, do I use I equals PRT? You would use that if you're looking for the interest, if you're trying to calculate interest. Or if you're trying to calculate the total amount to pay back, okay, then you would use the A equals P times 1 plus RT. Okay, So that's how you can tell. All right, so now we're going to actually start working problems, okay? These will all be simple interest problems.